and the lows.
100 matchups between Georgetown and Syracuse. A long 95-year history. The rivalry is alive and well, and today, the victors is Georgetown.
Lowe slices through the defense, behind the back pass. Corhen sticks it up and in. A little razzle-dazzle from Jalen Lowe to Cam Corhen, and that one may be the dagger.
And thus ends the second season under Adrian Autry, and it finishes in the second round of the ACC tournament in 2025.
Delivering our hottest takes along the way.
But it just makes you wonder what is going on in practice, because each time that Adrian Autry takes the podium, it's a lot of, we're working on it.
We're getting better.
We're working on it. We're getting better. We're getting better. Well, sure, maybe in theory they're getting better.
But
this is a fan base that needs you to be good now.
Say this about Syracuse basketball is crazy, because the brand of Syracuse basketball that I grew up knowing is so far distant from where this team is at now. But I mean, we could be talking about Syracuse at the bottom of the ACC.
I don't think this team makes the ACC tournament at this rate.
Get your voice heard by calling in at 315-443-2011 or check out our YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. It's the double overtime, and it starts right now.
83-72, the final score. Syracuse men's basketball takes down Pittsburgh on the road, goes to 11-5, and has back-to-back ACC road wins and a 2-1 start to ACC play for the first time under Adrian Autry. Jake Klein alongside Josh Richardson, we welcome you into our Ostrom Avenue studios for the double overtime. We would love to hear from you throughout the show, and if you'd like to get your voice heard on the air to talk about this Syracuse win, perhaps too close for comfort, 83-72, only an 11-point win. The lead was as big as 18. But if you want to get your voice in on the conversation, you can call us. 315-443-2011 is the number. 315-443-2011. You can also interact with us on our YouTube page, WAER Sports Talk, or on X at WAER Sports Talk. Josh,
yeah,
I suppose we start with the first half, because it was pretty. It was
perfect.
It felt like Syracuse was clicking on all cylinders. Probably their best offensive half of the season to date. Is that crazy to say?
Absolutely not. I don't think it's crazy. Honestly, I would say it's their most complete half of the season overall, because you score the 48 points, you're performing excellent offensively, you're shooting well from beyond the arc. I mean, this team overall, we can just talk about the full game, 83% from the free throw line. It's pretty good too. But defensively as well, just 37 points allowed. That was the most complete half of basketball I've seen from Syracuse so far this year. It has to be, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I thought Adrian Autry managed his rotations well in that first half. I thought Syracuse's best players took control, and maybe a little bit uncharacteristically, they shot the ball fantastic from three. They made 8 of them in the first half alone, 10 for the game. The previous game high was 9 against Stonehill this season.
Yeah, and that... You get 8 in the first half, and of course 9 against Stonehill. The levels of competition there are just so different, obviously. And now you get into ACC play, you're starting to play your best basketball. But if that only lasts for the first half, that is where my worries kind of begin. Because it's the same story. It's the same story every game, right? You have the 8 3-pointers in the first half, and then... Maybe you call it regression to the mean a little bit, but then you only have 2 in the second half. The offense was completely stagnant. And I think holistically, 20 minutes of great basketball doesn't win you any games. Not in the ACC. Not in a better ACC than it was once a year ago.
I agree. I think it was probably a little bit more than 20 minutes of great basketball. I didn't feel like Syracuse was fully stagnant in the second half. I thought they played some good basketball in the second half. It was not the shooting onslaught that they had in the first half by any means, but I do think it's a little bit of regression to the norm. You're not going to hit 8 3-pointers in every half. And I think, Syracuse fans were probably watching that game or listening to that game and bracing for impact to some degree. Yeah. Like, when's the pit run going to come?
I think we were both doing that too.
And it did a little bit. 7-0 was kind of the big Pitt run. That was their biggest run of the game. But all things considered, there was no kill shot, which is a 10-0 run. That's some college basketball coach lingo, right? You want to avoid the 10-0 run at all costs. Syracuse didn't give one up today.
No, they didn't.
And I think, was it a slower offense, a less sharp offense, a worse shooting performance in the second half? No doubt about it. But I think if you're Syracuse, you have to be happy with the way that, as Adrian Autry would say, there were no prolonged dips in this game, right? That's his big thing. No dips. Maybe a little bit during that 7-0 run where Syracuse kind of just went cold and didn't score for almost 3 minutes, but I didn't feel like there were really many dips, if any at all, in this game.
I think the issue is that the largest lead of the game for Syracuse came in the second half. It was 64-46, and that got down to 6 points. That is a 2-possession game with, 5 or 6 minutes left in the contest? That is too much time. And it's the same story over and over and over this season. It doesn't matter who the competition is. How many times did it happen during the non-conference? And maybe not the Houston and the Kansas non-conference, but the mid-major non-conference where Syracuse gets out to a good lead. Everybody thinks, hey, this is going to be the game that the Orange start strong. They finish strong through the whole way. It's not close. They dominate the mid-majors like every other ACC team does. And it's just not that. And it's the same type of situation. And yes, they didn't have Donnie Freeman for those games. Well, they have Donnie Freeman now. And you know what? Maybe the level of competition, the competition level has definitely gone up because now you're into conference play. But it's the same story over and over and over because it happened against Georgia Tech. They got up to a 20-point lead. Today it was 18, and it still got down to a 2-possession game.
Yeah.
They came away with the win in the end. They did. And I don't want to sound, all negative, but I feel like I have to because I've seen this story play out too many times to get my hopes up that this team is really starting to pick it up. I think they just played the worst team in the ACC, and it got down to a 6-point game.
Well, that's very kind of you to pretend to forget about the Boston College Eagles. Oh. But look, to me, it's not quite
as
big
that
a
next
concern.
weekend.
Right. I'm not quite as concerned because I think, we can nitpick the game, and that's why they pay us all this money to sit on the double overtime and nitpick games. But the fact
what money are you getting, buddy?
But the fact of the matter is, Syracuse went on a 13-0 run after Pitt took a 2-0 lead, and with maybe a few minutes of exception, this game was never in doubt. Even when the game was 6, 7, 8 points, I never felt like Syracuse is going to lose this game.
I did. I felt that way.
I didn't. So, and look, this is probably one of the first power conference games of the season for Syracuse where I never felt that way. And I think you have to give credit to Syracuse, which went into this game as a 1.5-point underdog on the road to a Pitt team that's, as you said,
really
pretty
bad. Yeah.
And they handled business. And, if you're a Syracuse fan, would you have preferred it to be a 30-point win? Of course. A 20-point win? Of course. But you went on the road. You beat a team in the ACC by double digits. I find it hard to complain. And I think, the one thing you probably wish Syracuse did differently in terms of handling Pitt was limit Brandon Cummings a little bit. He goes for a game-high 29 points off the bench. But that's the kind of player he is. And all things considered, only one other Pitt player who entered the game finished in double figures. That was Roman Cialepa with 13 points. Look, from a defensive perspective, I'm happy with that from Syracuse. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the dip from the first half to the second half just can't be that drastic.
I didn't think there was a huge dip during halftime.
I think 13 points is a pretty big dip considering you score 48, right? And of course, regression to the norm, regression to the mean.
Right.
But when you get to the point where now in the second half, if your regression puts you back to even with Pitt, 35-35 in the second half, and it was a lot closer than that, and it was a lot bigger of a lead than that at points throughout the game. I understand basketball is a game of runs. Adrian Autry has never won an ACC game by more than 14 points.
Yeah.
And in now 2.5-ish years roughly. That tells me that they just can't blow anybody out.
Yeah, but if you win the first half,
if
you win the first half by 11 points, all you have to do is tie Pitt in the second half.
Yeah, but you can't win
There's
games.
an aspect of situational basketball to it. Like, you're not going pedal to the metal throughout the second half. You're going to slow it down. You're going to try to bleed some clock. You're trying to win the game at the end of the day. We can sit here and say they want to win by 20. They want to win by 30. Great. Some teams can do that. NC State beat Florida State by 44 today. But right now, Syracuse has to try to get into the NCAA tournament by just winning the game, and then winning the next one, and then winning the next one, and then winning the next one. Just keep winning the game. I don't care if it's by 1 or if it's by 90. Just keep winning the game. And to me, I think Syracuse did almost everything it needed to do today to just win the game. Thought Nathan George didn't play great in the second half. Some careless turnovers. Syracuse got a little bit sloppy at times. I was happy about the way they came out for the second half, and it did. It got sloppy. That was the quote-unquote dip of this game, was that stretch kind of in the middle of the second half where Pitt got it down to 6 with about 6 minutes to go.
Yeah, I think there are two, huge offensive outliers, and it's why Syracuse won this game.
Yeah.
It's J.J. Starling and Donnie Freeman. And for good reason, right? I mean, these two are the two best players on the Orange. J.J. Starling has been around this team. Donnie Freeman is now finally back and healthy, hopefully for the long term. But Freeman, consistent as he can be. 11 points, 4 of 7 field goals in the first half, 11 points, 4 of 6 in the second half. Hit 3 triples. He was fantastic, and he made so many big shots down the stretch, especially. He had that one mid-range fadeaway from the right wing where we kind of looked at each other while we were watching the game and said, wow, that was a difficult shot. Yeah. And Starling had a good game as well. 12 points, 4-4 in the first half, and 7 in the second half. He did what he needed to do. The dip from Nate George, the dip from Nate Kings, two guys that offensively have been producing at a pretty high clip decently throughout the season.
Yeah.
Nate King's obviously struggling to shoot a little bit more, but need more out of them because when it's not Pittsburgh, and this is my whole worry, right? When it's not Pittsburgh and it's Duke and it's North Carolina and it's SMU and it's Virginia and it's Louisville, those are 5 teams in the ACC that are all ranked and they're all on Syracuse's schedule this year. When it's not Pitt and it's one of those teams, what is going to happen? Because if these same dips still occur, maybe they're trying to go pedal to the metal the whole time, but maybe they don't hit 8 threes in the first half.
I agree with you about JJ and Donnie.
Yeah.
And early on throughout this season, I was going back and forth on this. Freeman was out for a long time and has missed well over 20 games with injury at this point in his collegiate career. Starling had some rough games.
Yeah.
I mean, the Vegas tournament, he was
bad.
Almost nowhere to be found.
Tyler Betsy was the leading
scorer. There have been points in this season where I have at least thought to myself that William Kyle is the best player on this team, that Nate Kings is the best player on this team, that Nate George is the best player on this team. No.
It's Donnie Freeman.
I think it's J.J. Starling.
Oh, really?
When you need a bucket on this Syracuse team, I want J.J. Starling with the ball downhill going to the rim.
Wow, I disagree. I think it's absolutely Donnie Freeman. I think his size, his length, the speed that he can get up and down the court. I trust Donnie Freeman to be a 3-level scorer significantly more than J.J. Starling. You want J.J. to go downhill and get to the lane. I'm comfortable with Donnie Freeman wherever he is on the court to shoot whatever shot he can and make it.
Let us know if you think it's Donnie Freeman or J.J. Starling or maybe somebody else out of left field.
William Kyle.
The best player on this Syracuse team. You can call us 315-443-2011 or interact with us on X or YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. Jake Klein and Josh Richardson breaking down the 83-72 Syracuse win over Pitt on the road. Syracuse goes to 11-5. Look, they're both great players. I thought the confidence that JJ came out with today was one of the first times this year where he looked like the JJ of last year who could take over a game. I think there's an argument to be made that you don't want to need that JJ if you're Syracuse. But right away, I think it was his first basket of the game, he took a pass in the corner and just quick trigger, catch and catch and shoot, corner three, and just drilled it. And it's like, where is that guy? Where is the confidence that he's shooting with?
It's
Why
not
doesn't
there
he
all
shoot
the
that way
time.
at the free throw
Yeah.
line?
Oh, man. He went 2 for 2 today, though.
Yeah, but I think when Starling is at his best is when he's got a head of steam into the paint. He's got some crafty finishes and a crafty layup package, and I was impressed by J.J. Starling today. He goes for 19 in the win over Pitt. We've got a caller on the line here on the double overtime.
Hi, guys. Just a couple observations. First of all, number one, anytime you win at Pitt is a good win for me, and by how much or whatever, I really
agree.
don't care. But here's what my observation is: if J.J. Starling, if we had any kind of a game like he had today against Clemson, we would be undefeated in the ACC, in my opinion. But here also is the question, though. If J.J. was very hot in the first half, and I think in the beginning of the second half, what happens to him, though? All of a sudden, I think if you look, he got a three-pointer, and then he had a two-pointer to get up to 19, and that had to be well before 10 minutes had gone by in the second half, and then he disappeared.
Yeah. This is Ron from Syracuse on the line, by the way. Ron, we owe you a proper introduction.
Thank you very much.
You got it. And I agree with you, Ron. J.J. Starling, and I've asked him this at times, he comes out hot, whether it's in the first half or the second half, and then he gets taken out of the game. Yep. And it's like, what are the rotations here? You know, our colleague Sam Reese would tell you it's the nerds, right? It's some papers, some analytics that tell you J.J. has to come in or out at this time. I would like to see them ride the hot hand.
That today for Pittsburgh, that Cummings. I mean, he kept going like the bunny. And I mean, the guy was scoring. He was hot. Yep. JJ could be doing that too, but like I said, he just disappears. I don't understand that.
Right, Brandon Cummings. I don't have the number in front of me, but I would imagine he played close to the entire second half.
Yeah, he played 33 total minutes
for the game.
Yeah.
So.
And he kept chucking them up. I mean, I guess he had that one bad three-pointer towards the end, which, but still, the guy, I mean, put him on his back.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you very much for the call, Ron. We appreciate it. If you want to join Ron and call in, 315-443-2011 is the number to call. 315-443-2011. Jake Klein and Josh Richardson breaking down Syracuse's 83-72 road win over Pitt to climb to 11-5 on the season. Look, the JJ thing is an interesting question because he hasn't been consistent.
Not at all.
To some degree, I think we could go back and forth about Donnie and JJ until the cows come home.
And it's 1A, 1B, I think.
And sometimes you just got to let the big dogs eat.
Uh-huh. Absolutely.
And I give Syracuse two, quote-unquote big dogs, Donnie Freeman and J.J. Starling. And I think to some degree, Adrian Autry did the right thing today in that in a game that was, getting fairly close, but Syracuse was comfortably up in. Who's going to be the guy who provides the dagger? Who's going to be the alpha dog down the stretch? Like, you give the ball to your best players. Yep. And I give him credit for that.
Absolutely. I think Ron brings up a really interesting point as well, talking about Brandon Cummings and how, he just never stopped. He just kept chucking. He kept putting them up. He finished 29 points, 11 of 17 from the field. I think a part of that also has to do with there's not a whole lot of other scoring options for Pitt, and that's something where Syracuse has a little bit of more leeway with. And Starling, he only has 11 field goals, started off strong in the first half. He was 4 of 4. He took 7 shots in the second half, but it's just also that Donnie Freeman is right there as well. He had 13 field goals. William Kyle only played 19 minutes. He had 7 shots.
Yeah, that was confusing to me.
Yeah, what, did he only play 19 minutes?
19 minutes for Kyle and 17
really
for Soiree?
It made sense in the first half because he was in foul trouble early on, but then he finished with 2 personal fouls. So then why?
I'd like to see Kyle up near 20, 25 maybe 30
Maybe
minutes.
30 if he
I don't
can
need
stay
to see
out of foul
Suarez
trouble.
for 17 minutes.
Not at all.
And I'd like to see more also of Kyan Anthony and Sadiq White. I do think they both provide something on the offensive end.
Kyan only played 10 minutes.
Especially Kyan Anthony. So,
10 minutes, 2 points.
Yeah.
Both of them
I
free
said it
throws.
before the game. I wanted more Kyan. We've got another caller. Dave from Liverpool is on the line. Dave, what do you got for us?
Yeah, the real season doesn't start until after the Boston College game. Syracuse is playing all the bottom feeders.
But Dave, let me ask you this: you say the real season doesn't start, but the season can be over if you lose one of these 4 games. Georgia Tech, Pitt, Florida State, Boston College. Probably the 4 worst teams in the ACC, right in a row. If Syracuse stubs its toe and loses any of them, that may eliminate them from NCAA tournament contention.
Well, they're not going to go to the NCAA tournament anyway because their record in the ACC is probably going to end up 9-9 at best.
Yeah, Dave, I don't disagree with you, and we greatly appreciate the call. I think they've got a fighter's chance. I think there's a shot that they can make the NCAA tournament, but it's got to be wins. They're going to have to beat
a chance too.
At least a couple. I'm not optimistic about it. If you put a squirt gun to my head and you said, are they going to make the NCAA tournament, I would tell you no.
Yeah. If this was last year's ACC and this year's team, I would feel so much more confident.
My point is,
the ACC is a lot deeper this year than it was just a year ago.
I agree. And Dave's right. Like, Syracuse is in a stretch right now of playing maybe the 4 worst teams in the ACC.
And you have to take advantage.
BC is awful. Lost a game to Central Connecticut State. Lost another one to Davidson.
Florida State just lost by 46 today.
44 or something today. You just have to win those games. I don't care if it's by 1. I don't care if it's by 90. Simply win the games. Don't stub your toe. Don't pick up a second horrendous loss on the season. Just get through those, then worry about trying to slay some dragons if you're Syracuse.
The counterpoint, though, to that is if you're thinking about what a successful season is, then sure, yes, just win the games and get by. You don't care by how much it is. But if you're really looking on, okay, how can this team make the NCAA tournament already with a loss to Hofstra on the resume, you need to blow out these teams. You need to win these games by a larger margin because that is what the selection committees will always look at is when you're on the bubble and you're going against another team, possibly from the ACC, they're going to look at, okay, which games were the common opponents in the ACC, who won what games, and when they both won, how much did they win by? What was the score differential? And that is how some of this stuff is going to be determined because you really can't afford to slip. Obviously, the season can be over with a loss to 1, maybe 2 of these. But as you keep going and you think about it, if you want to make the ACC tournament, or the NCAA tournament rather, you need to play well in the regular season, well enough to blow out a bunch of these teams, and then still have a good run in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, Syracuse did climb up to 64th in Ken Palm with the win over Pitt today. That's in the ballpark of teams like West Virginia, Providence, Virginia Tech. So, I mean, at least they're not surrounded by Dayton and Colorado State and McNeese State anymore.
Shout out Hofstra for continuing to win as well, making that loss look a little bit better.
And we'll have to wait until tomorrow morning to see where Syracuse falls in the net rankings. The Orange take down Pittsburgh 83-72 to go to 11-5 on the season. I was happy with the win. Josh is a little more pessimistic, but
I'm cautious. I'm cautious.
We'll have to see what our play-by-play man, Adam Hipsky, thinks, because we've got him live from the Peterson Events Center joining us on the double overtime on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
The Catholic Church, in terms of storytelling aesthetics, they got everyone beat.
I'm Jesse Thorne. On Bullseye, Ryan Johnson, director of the Knives Out films, talks about why the latest one is set in a Catholic cathedral, not a SoCal megachurch.
The churches I grew up in, most of them look like pottery barns.
That's on the next Bullseye from MaximumFun.org and NPR.
Sunday morning at 11 on WAER. there is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
Syracuse men's lacrosse had arguably maybe Gary Gates' best weekend ever as head coach.
The Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
The voice of Syracuse men's lacrosse and Syracuse women's basketball as well. Tim Leonard, Javon Edmonds of Syracuse.com.
Check out weekly episodes and listen at WAER.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening. We hope you're enjoying this WAER sports broadcast. Our sports staff goes where the teams go, home and away, and prepare for days before each game broadcast. Our talk show and podcast hosts analyze games, pour over stats, and keep up on sports trends. These and many behind-the-scenes opportunities are made possible by listener donations. So if you're a fan or an alum, donate to keep our sports legacy strong at WAER.org and click donate.
Betsy, far corner. Gets it back up top to Nathan George. Crosses over with the right hand. Sends it back up top to Donnie Freeman. Releases from 3. Splash. Freeman from downtown. He's got his second long ball of the afternoon.
22 points on 8 of 13 shooting for Donnie Freeman. 3 triples for the sophomore forward. He helped lead Syracuse to an 83-72 win over Pitt. 2-1 in conference play this season for the Orange. Second road win in ACC play on the year as well for Syracuse. Josh Richardson, Jake Klein here on WAER Syracuse, here from our Ostrom Avenue studios on the double overtime. If you want to call in, talk more about the contest, you can do just that. 315-443-2011. Once again, 315-443-2011. Jake, we've talked about it a little bit, some of the positives, some of the negatives. I've been a little bit more pessimistic than you have during this 11-point win for Syracuse.
That's usually my job.
Yeah, usually it is. We've gotten to switch. But now, obviously we were not there, so we can't tell you everything about the game. We get to turn to someone that was live at the scene, got to call the game as well, our play-by-play man for WAER, Adam Hipsky. Adam, how are you?
Hey, guys. How are we doing?
Good. How game obviously good. What was the vantage point like for you? Where are you guys sitting? I know obviously it's a lot different wherever you go for different stadiums.
Yeah, not parallel with the court. We're actually behind the basket, but decently middle. Not super high up. Honestly, a pretty good view, but definitely a little far away from the far basket, but not bad. Nothing to complain about. The hospitality here has been great.
It's good. Not a whole lot to complain about on your end, I would imagine, during this win.
No.
Never.
And Adam, I'm curious. The Oakland Zoo, the Pete. It goes down as one of the better college basketball venues, I think, at least in its heyday. But as Josh and I have talked about, like Pitt's pretty bad. Still winter break there, I guess. What was the scene at the Pete?
Well, I think that's the main point, is that the students aren't fully back yet. Classes start on Monday. It was a decent crowd from the students, but the vibe that we got from others was that, especially for a Syracuse game, you would think that, had this been when school was in session, it would be a much different crowd. A good amount of Syracuse fans here, I'll say. There was a orange sprinkle throughout the building, and I thought that for how many people were here, I thought it was a pretty good environment. I thought that, both teams went on runs throughout the game, and, Syracuse gave Pitt fans, something to, they would hush them up, and then Pitt would go on a little run, and the fans would get back into it. So overall, I thought it was a good environment.
Yeah, Adam, you mentioned the runs, and that's really where I kind of want to start. This team, it seems like every single year, it's a carbon copy type situation of how the game goes. And, as we talk about that, Stan from Solvay he wants to talk about some of the positives that he's seen on the game. So, Stan, what do you got for us?
Hey there. Well, when I was watching the game on TV on the ACC network, and the announcers said, if Syracuse plays like this, the way they played in the first half, they can beat anybody in the country.
Totally.
And I agreed with that. and I think they're a little better, especially with Donnie Freeman. And got to say this, they're 2-1 in ACC play, and the 2 road games. I know you guys, the teams aren't the greatest, but Boston College almost beat Louisville. They were. So don't, I mean, let's say, let's roll with this. And they're a better team now than they were. Donnie Freeman's made them better, and if they play like those announcers said, and now that's a model half, if they play like that, they can beat anybody. And let's face it, the first 3 losses, they could have beat Houston. They probably could have beat Kansas, and they got blown out by Iowa State. But that was without Donnie Freeman. So I just let's stay positive with this team, and they're getting a little better. That's how I feel.
No, Stan, where do you see the ceiling of this team? Like, what do you think at its peak? They play like that in the first half. What do you think they can do? How far can they go if they keep up that level of play?
Yeah, first of all, they'll absolutely make the NCAA tournament.
Oh,
now,
absolutely.
I don't mean right now, but not right now. But
okay.
But if they continue to win, yeah, I mean, they'll make the tournament. And like I said, look what beginning of the year without Donnie Freeman. This is a good team. And so I'm just saying, I see them, if they continue to get better, we have to be with them. I've been watching them since Roy Danforth was the coach. And we've got to really, everybody's got work to do in anything they do in their lives and in their careers. So, everything's a work in progress. So I think they're a little better, and I think they're going to do better than we all think. They're 2-1 in ACC on the road.
You take it.
Freeman's a good ball player.
You have to.
And if Starling can stay consistent, I think they're getting better. So they're a little better than they were from the beginning of the year.
Yeah, a little bit from the beginning of the year. Stan from Solvay, thank you so much for the call. Adam, what do you make of Stan's comments? How are you feeling about that?
I think that it's super interesting that this team is still within its first, this was the 3rd game back with Donnie Freeman. So not only, obviously you add so much, but this was a Syracuse team that for, a dozen games had to figure out a rotation without what's looking like an 18, 20-point per game scorer. So not only that, but you're still trying to figure out this rotation. And I think Syracuse taking 2 out of 3 and hanging tough with Clemson, I think it's super encouraging because there's so much to figure out. It's not as easy as just, we got our best player back, or, we got maybe our top scorer. I heard earlier, the discussion, J.J. Starling, Donnie Freeman, whatever. No matter what, it's hard to just slip a guy in a rotation like that and just, not lose anything. Guys are going to play less minutes than what they're playing. So I think that the way that Adrian Autry has handled these last, 3 games, especially without a Donnie Freeman scoring in the first 28 minutes of that Clemson game, I think it's been pretty impressive.
So on the topic of the Autry rotations, I thought it was preposterous that Kyle played 19 minutes and Soiree played 17 minutes. Did you have a read on that?
And no, not necessarily, but do I think that William Kyle should have played more than 19 minutes?
He has
but
to,
right? On the flip side of it, I thought Akir Soiree played very well today, and probably his best game in a Syracuse uniform. I thought that he made a couple plays defensively, a couple effort plays, saved a possession from Syracuse in the first and second half, and knocked down 2 free throws and finished at the rim. If that's what you're getting out of your backup big man, great. But, yeah, William Kyle only playing 19 minutes was definitely a surprise. It didn't really seem like Pitt had much of an answer for him.
Yeah, I didn't think so either.
Yeah, Soiree getting more playing time is great, but to only play 2 less minutes than William Kyle, who, we've talked about it, has been one of Syracuse's best players so far this year.
I think Soiree is like a 12, 15-minute cap.
There
and Kyle has to be around 25.
Where that might be on the higher side, 12 to 15 minutes. But in William Kyle, just continuing to harp on him and maybe makes this decision more and more puzzling, is that the presence that he has, we talked about it throughout the broadcast, goes well beyond the stat sheet.
Yeah.
Every Pitt shot from, within 5 feet has to, the shot direction, the angle, where guys have to adjust their bodies. Every single shot attempt from inside 5 feet is altered when William Kyle is inside, the restricted arc. It's a completely different ball game when he's in there. And Soiree can do a little bit of that, but I think the timing of William Kyle, he's a little bit more mature, a little bit more experienced. That is unmatched. And something that I think impressed me not only today but throughout this entire season.
Yeah, I think there's a chance, by the way, that William Kyle goes before Donnie Freeman in the NBA draft.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
I've been
against
reading
Donnie Freeman, but
I
I
look
think
at some of the
William Kyle
mock
has been
drafts.
great.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I think he's been great, but does it translate? Does he really translate to what the current landscape of the NBA is? A 6'9" big man that can't make a shot beyond 10 feet?
I don't necessarily know if I agree with that.
He's an
but
NBA project. The body, the athleticism is clearly NBA level.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think someone
disputing
takes
that.
a first round chance on that body and that athleticism.
I don't know if you take a chance on that in the first round.
100%. And how athletic he is. And yeah, obviously, and he's probably not a lottery pick, but at the end of the first round, if you get a rotational piece of a guy like that can be 6'9" and play with someone that's 6'11", 7 feet, he can guard. He can guard above his size. I think he's absolutely worth a first-round pick the way that he's played.
Adam, let's go back to the Autry rotations because there were two more kind of question marks, literally question marks that I have written down on the box score in front of me. Sadiq White, 4 points in 15 minutes. Cayenne, 2 points in 10 minutes. That's the second game in a row where Cayenne is under 20 minutes. Today, 10. What's up with the freshman not getting in there much?
And Adrian Autry talked about this post-game, and it kind of ties into what we were talking about with you're still trying to figure out this rotation with Donnie Freeman, who plays well with Donnie. It's one thing to do it in practice, but in a game setting, you have to figure out who the best four around him are.
They have a lot of wings.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. But the main thing that Autry talked about was there are multiple guys. There are 4 or 5 guys that can score double figures any night on this team, and he includes.
Yeah, I don't know if
Cayenne
that's
Anthony.
a good thing though.
I think that it gives you the opportunity where maybe J.J. Starling's playing better. Starling didn't look great at all against Georgia Tech. 28 minutes, he was 2 for 10 from the field. Today he's unstoppable. So I think some of those minutes, obviously, it's give or take. It's all give or take with. Who you're playing, the matchups. Today, obviously, Starling had the hot hand. He plays 32 minutes and hardly comes out in the second half. Still more than I would have liked. I think he kind of fiddles around in the second half when things are starting to slip away. And the one thing that always interests me is the mass substitutions that he does. The 3-4 guys at a time. It's one thing to take away Donnie Freeman and William Kyle. But then when you take away Donnie Freeman, William Kyle, Nate Kings, and Nate George, it's like, okay, well, now where's your scoring coming from? Now there's no continuity on the court. So that was my main thing that I thought was interesting.
Well, I think what he's doing is sometimes he's trying to just shift the momentum on a dime without calling a timeout.
Yeah. I think it goes back to the nerds
sometimes he
thing.
does it. It almost feels like he does it sometimes when he has the momentum.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the nerds thing.
Yeah.
Like he's not even basing it off of the flow of the game. He's just going off of this guy needs to play X amount of minutes now so he can play X amount of minutes later, and it's just the same schedule for basically everyone on the court.
I do think the timing of his substitutions have been questionable and puzzling.
Yeah, I agree.
Adam, one other thing about the rotations that was kind of bugging me a little bit, Nate George, 38 minutes.
Yeah, I do not think he
5
was
points,
good today at all.
6 turnovers.
Especially in the second half.
1 of 6 from the field. That long. I mean, I understand there isn't necessarily another true point guard on this team, but J.J. Starling has been a de facto point guard for the last 2 years-ish. It's just interesting that George doesn't get a little bit more time on the bench when clearly he was struggling during the game, and then you maybe run JJ at the 1 and you can get Cayenne off the bench. You can get Sadiq White off the bench to kind of run in that rotation as well.
This might sound obvious, but I think the Syracuse team is far and away at its best offensively when Nate George, Donnie Freeman, and J.J. Starling and William Kyle are all on the court together.
Wow.
Nate Kings, I think, is a little bit more interchangeable with Tyler Betsy and Cayenne Anthony, but listen, Nate George has the ball in his hands a lot. Now, do I think today
Why?
was a good game
Why
for
does he
him?
have it in his hands so much?
Well,
Like
he's-
on the
he's a
days where
better floor
JJ is
general.
doing what he did today,
Give it to JJ.
Just give JJ the ball.
JJ, sure. I do not think JJ Starling is even close to the floor general.
Oh, no, I don't think anyone
disagree.
is, yeah.
I don't
that
disagree.
Nathan
but
George is. And I think that Nathan George, more times than not, sets the table and gets guys open.
Totally agree.
But I do think the 6 turnovers is high, and I don't think you're going to find anyone that disagrees with
That's
that.
back-to-back
But-
games with
but
6
also,
turnovers.
But he's playing 38 minutes, and he's handling the ball a lot in all 38 of those minutes. Now, I think that turnovers are going to come with that high volume.
Yeah.
But you also got to give him 7 assists.
But to some degree,
But
is
I'm
there
just saying
not
give
a,
him a rest. Like,
is
give him
there-
a little bit of a
Is
break.
there not at some point in the middle of this game, whether it's mid first half or mid second half, but like at some point you're like, okay, today's not Nate George's day. Is there not at a point that comes where eventually you're like, okay, let's
totally
just
agree.
run JJ at the 1 here?
I don't think so. I like Nathan George in there. I think that the offense has better movement, and I think that Donnie Freeman plays a large part in that as well. I think that he's improved the spacing on this, on the floor tremendously.
And Autry said he would, to his credit.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I think that, trust me, I think Nathan George has wanted to have a better offensive output in terms of scoring this season. Throughout the year, I think when you hear him talk, he obviously prioritizes getting guys open and the assists and the passing. But I think he's a more than capable offensive threat. Today he didn't have it. I thought they played solid defense on him, and he made a couple ill-advised decisions. But I think that Nathan George does need to be out there, maybe not 38 minutes a game, but certainly 30-plus in every game.
Yeah, I'm fine with 30-plus. It's just 38 kind of starts to get a little bit repetitive when you're not having a great day. I would sacrifice 5 minutes of Nate George on a day like this for 5 minutes of Kyan Anthony just to get him some more run and see what he can bring to the table.
That's where a little bit more maybe scoring. I don't know if he – I think you have to be very careful that if you are going to make that trade – and give Kyan Anthony a little bit more time, you have to be very careful on who are the other 4 on the floor and making sure that you have, a Starling in there or a Freeman. I would say Starling's probably the best shot creator when times, when the shot clock's running out. I don't know if I necessarily agree with you, Jake, that he's my number 1 scoring option, but I definitely think he's the best shot creator.
Yeah, that's what I said. When you need a bucket, I want J.J. Starling with the ball going downhill.
I want Donnie Freeman. I think it's Donnie Freeman, but we've talked about that. Adam, where do you stand on that?
I think Donnie Freeman's the best shot maker on this team.
I agree, but you have to set him up for a shot.
Yeah,
Do you?
exactly.
Yes.
No, if you don't, I don't think Donnie Freeman's. I thought
he created a
Donnie
large
Freeman's been
number of
great.
shots in this game, especially down the stretch.
Don't discredit him on those, but they were also a lot of them were set up, and when he was in isolation, that was when he was at his worst. That was, he got blocked a couple of times, and to his credit, Pitt sent a couple of doubles at him, and that's something that he hasn't seen a ton of, and honestly something that I was surprised to see that the Panthers were willing to send a double at him. I think there's enough capable offensive threats around him, especially down the stretch when you have that starting 5 in there. But they were willing to send a double. I thought that Donnie Freeman is far and away at his best when Nathan George and J.J. Starling are driving and he can get the kick out and then, catch a defense a little bit more off kilter.
Freeman had 22 points. George Starling, 11 total assists. Helped SU win 83-72 over Pitt down in Pittsburgh. Josh Richardson, Jake Klein, Adam Hipsky, the play-by-play man on the phone. If you want to get your opinions voiced on how Syracuse looked, maybe who the best shot creator scorer is for Syracuse, and anything else about the game, 315-443-2011. Interact with us at WAER Sports Talk on X and YouTube.
So, Adam, we listened to you call the game on WAER Syracuse today, and the name we heard probably more than anyone else was Brandon Cummings for Pitt.
Yeah.
29 points off the bench, I will add. 11 of 17 from the field. He was the only Pitt player up above 13 points and one of 2 in double figures. What's your level of concern allowing that from a pretty inconsistent scorer?
Not high. He can be
I
a high
agree.
volume guy for them.
Yeah.
I thought he made a lot of tough shots. I thought, to his credit, he got Nate Kings in foul trouble, who I think that from seeing what I saw against Georgia Tech, it made me believe that Nate Kings is probably this team's best perimeter defender.
I don't think that's in question at all.
I totally agree with that.
So I liked the matchup that Autry, he kind of switched him onto Cummings, because Kings, I think, maybe had one defensive possession on Brandon Cummings the entire first half.
Yeah.
And he gets, he draws 2 quick fouls on Nate Kings and immediately gets, Starling and George on him, which I think is probably advantage, offense there with Brandon Cummings. But, I mean, this is a guy that's more than capable. He scored 30 once this year against Eastern Kentucky, and he scored 34 against Hofstra, a team that Syracuse played and lost to. So I think that when he's in a groove like that, that does a lot for a player. And, he didn't miss a shot in the first half.
Yeah.
So he missed a few in the second. Syracuse got him out of rhythm a little bit, hedged a little bit more on ball screens, and I think that kind of took him out of his groove when you run him off the three-point line. So I thought, credit Syracuse for making the appropriate defensive adjustments to stop any further damage. Obviously, he still did plenty in that Pitt game, and the Panthers probably don't cut it to 6 without his doings. But, no, I thought Syracuse defensively made some nice adjustments and really kind of dialed it in and made sure, the bad didn't get worse.
Yeah, they gave up 72 points on the day, and I thought really the defensive effort was better than 72 points represents. I mean, 44% from the field for Pitt, which is not great, and under 20% from 3. Got to be really happy with that if you're Syracuse. It was literally just Brandon Cummings. The rest of the Pitt roster did nothing.
Yeah.
And 2 guys that are super dangerous for them, DeMarco Minor, who's a 5th-year, who's been around the block and is a great scorer, and Cameron Corrin, who leads this team in scoring, both of those guys in single digits. So not only
combined
that, but
minus 22.
Yeah, you give those guys, if you were going to tell me before this game that Cameron Corrin and DeMarco Minor are going to combine for 14 points, you have to feel good about Syracuse's chances. And Adrian Autry talked about it post-game, is that when you stop Corrin on this Pitt team and you force, a tough catch and, you try and push him out, a lot of this Panthers offense runs through him, even if it's not a field goal attempt from the big man. A lot of it runs through him. And I thought Syracuse did a nice job. That was my observation, and Autry backed that up in his post-game press conference. He gave his guys a lot of credit for making it difficult on the big guy.
Yeah, and that's another thing, Adam, right? I mean, especially if the man inside is struggling a little bit, maybe you don't have to send as many double teams. It can kind of be one-on-one, and that limits a lot of perimeter production. And especially you talk about the 19% from 3, but I think also the volume of that is really important as well. It's not like they only took, 10 threes? It was 5 of 26 from beyond the arc. So Syracuse certainly did play well defensively from the perimeter. And I think a lot of that does go towards Nate Kings, like you mentioned. And Cummings, just to kind of add on to that point, I mean, he has been so inconsistent in ACC play. That was his first game in double digits.
Yeah, he's definitely just a guy who randomly pops off for 25, 30 points.
29,
every now and
34 against Hofstra.
That's why it didn't really concern me.
And then he has 5 points against Clemson in 15 minutes.
Yeah,
and it wasn't
somebody
like
had to score 29 of the 72 Pitt points, and it was him.
And he wasn't getting wide open looks. I mean, Syracuse was making him work for those. I mean, they were going. He would take a ball screen, go right, wouldn't have anything. Take the same ball screen, Corrin would flip around and send him left. Like, when you're making him go and switch directions and make him work for those shots, you're doing your job defensively. Sometimes a guy's just on, and I thought Cummings was on today, but, unlucky for Syracuse that he had one of his games where he can pour in almost 30 points, but luckily for Syracuse, they leave Pitt with a win.
Yeah. What was the reaction from Adrian Autry after the game? I usually do my scroll through Twitter and just look at the quotes, but I honestly haven't seen any. I don't know if the algorithm is getting me here, but how was he after the game?
He was happy. He was happy. I mean, listen, winning on the road is hard in the ACC.
Yeah.
Whatever, it doesn't matter the environment, kids not going back to school. Winning back-to-back games in the ACC is hard. Syracuse did it just once last year, and you do both of them this year on the road. So, he's happy. Are there things that he wants to clean up? He said that he doesn't think this is anywhere close to what the best 40 minutes could look like. He didn't like the dip in the second half.
Yeah,
there was one.
Well, I guess we were unsure if that would be classified as a dip.
It was a dip. There was no level 5 energy, but there was a dip in this press conference. But, he gave his guys a lot of credit to pick up 2 pretty valuable wins on the road. And I understand that these are not, upper echelon teams in the ACC. But a win might not matter as much as a loss does. A loss
that was my whole point.
Certainly damage
you have
quite a bit.
You have nothing to gain but everything to lose.
Yeah,
correct. And
same with Florida State, same with BC.
Yep.
When you go on the road in those 2 games and pick up 2 wins, you got to have guts, and I thought Syracuse showed it today.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, that's what Josh and I were talking about earlier, and one of our callers, I think it was Ron.
It was Ron.
No, it's Dave from Liverpool, who said the season doesn't start until after the Boston College game.
He did.
I somewhat agree, but I don't know. Yeah, you said it, Josh. You have everything to lose and nothing to gain over this 4-game stretch. GT, Pitt, Florida State, Boston College. You've got to just win the game.
And that's the thing.
I
think the thought.
Totally,
go ahead, Adam. Go ahead.
I don't totally agree that the season doesn't start until Boston College. I mean, tell that to these guys after Hofstra.
Yeah.
You lose that Hofstra game, and the air is absolutely sucked out of the season. Obviously Syracuse still has a chance to bounce back, and Hofstra looks a lot better now than what you thought after that game. But no, every game matters, and I think Adrian Autry especially has to have learned that over the last couple of years, that you cannot take any game for granted. You cannot take any win, especially for granted, because you never know when you have a Lemoyne or a Youngstown State like last year, where it takes everything out of you just to survive with a win. Yeah, exactly.
I'll say this as you start to look ahead. We've documented Florida State is poor. Boston College is one of the worst teams in the history of ACC
Very
basketball. Poor. But even after that, you play Virginia Tech at home and Miami at home back-to-back on the 21st and the 24th before you get to your first premier ACC game against NC State. I don't think it's unreasonable to say that having lost to Clemson, Syracuse could go into that road game at NC State having won 6 straight ACC games.
Absolutely.
And at that point,
it's certainly possible.
And at that point, it's anything goes the rest of the way. The next 4 games have to be about putting yourself in position to be in position.
That's also a handful of games that Syracuse has with its entire roster.
Yeah.
Not only
Nobody's
that,
out.
but these 2 games, obviously, win is priority number 1, but priority number 2 has to be, figure out what your rotation is. This going to be a team that plays 9 deep? I think it is. I think you have to have Soiree in there. But, Bryce Zephyr was hit or miss, with his minutes. But it certainly seems like with Donnie Freeman back, he's probably, out of the consistent
he should
rotation.
not be in the rotation.
So I think that you have time to figure out that minute, who gets what, who plays well with who. Sadiq White is an interesting, factor in there. I think him and Tyler Betsy are 2 guys that, at their best can be, real difference makers and X factors for Syracuse. But, at their worst, I could see them playing single-digit minutes. I really do think this team, it sounds obvious, but I think this team is so much better when it's the starting 5 on the court.
Yeah, I mean that just kind of checks out, right? I mean Tyler Betsy had that great game against Houston.
I thought he played really well today. I mean, at least
he was
in the
3 of
first
4
half.
off the bench. He had 9
they were in
points.
quick succession too.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a big part of Syracuse expanding that lead in the first half. He drilled 3 in a span of 3 or 4 minutes, and I thought he really brought the juice off the bench as Adrian.
I want to get Adam's take on this because I want to go back to the comment made by Dave. Right, it doesn't start until after Boston College. I think a part of that is almost taking some of these games for granted. Right, it's almost assuming that Syracuse is going to win those games, and then you can start to go forward. The issue with those kind of statements is that over in the Adrian Autry era in the 2.5 years is that just hasn't been the status quo the way that it was a lot more under Boeheim.
I think this probably speaks more so to my, I guess, underlying belief about this team, even though I'm saying I do think they have a fighter's chance to make the NCAA tournament. There is not a game on the schedule that I can say with 100% confidence that Syracuse will win.
Which is a problem, which is a major problem, at least I would say. Adam?
Well, no, not necessarily. This is college basketball that we're talking about. It's not college football where, there is a large gap between the best teams, the good teams, and the middling teams. College basketball, night in and night out, you go on the road, if you're not a top 5 team, and even top 5 teams can get upset every single night. I mean, Michigan lost today.
Yeah, look at Michigan today.
And they did that at home. So, certainly I think that Duke, that's a tough one. At Duke is absolutely going to be a tough one for Syracuse. But if the Orange play up to what they are capable of, there shouldn't be a game on the schedule that they have at home, including North Carolina, where the other team should look at this one as an easy win.
That's a good point.
So I think that there's not a game that you can say for certain that Syracuse is absolutely going to win, but in conference play in the ACC, while it might be down, no, that's not a concern in my mind whatsoever.
Yeah, I guess there's not a game where I could say with 100% certainty that Syracuse is going to lose.
I could say for 100%. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I think at Duke and honestly at North Carolina, I think are probably the two that I would have circled on.
We'll have to have some kind of friendly wager on that, I guess, if I'm getting such great odds from you two.
What would you like to put on that? Just a gentleman's bet?
Tully's tenders?
I'm fine with that. Adam, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you get home safe. Have nice travels, and you can get back for classes starting on Monday.
Oh, don't remind me, Josh.
You called a great game today. Adam Hipsky here for WAER. Josh Richardson and Jake Klein, we've got about 40 more minutes left here on the Double Overtime tonight. We'll keep talking about Syracuse hoops, some more season outlook, what the rest of the season can look like, and we'll get into our final words a little bit closer to the end. Stay with us here on WAER.
NewsHour from the BBC brings you interviews, news and analysis of the day's top global events.
What's going on?
What happens next?
Let's get more on our top story now.
With reporters across the world covering stories when they happen, wherever they happen.
This place is so remote that it's hard to imagine it as the front line of a major geopolitical row.
NewsHour from the BBC.
Weekdays after Morning Edition at 9 on WAER, your local NPR station.
Imagine the creature is out there. It's already got a piece of you, and you know that it wants to finish the job. Snap Judgment's Tooth and Claw Deep Dive. We're calling it Florida Alligator Man. Snap Judgment, a real-life movie of the mind. Do not miss it.
Sunday morning at 10 on 88.3 FM WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
Jazz legends, the Headhunters, join us on this week's Mountain Stage, along with Amanda Ann Platt and the Honeycutters, Chris Matthews, David Berkeley, and Buffalo Rose.
Hi, this is Bill Summers of the Headhunters. Join us this week in live performance on Mountain Stage.
Sunday from noon to 2 on 88.3 FM WAER.
George controls with the right hand, finds Freeman, near corner, double comes, he spins out of it, finds Kyle on the baseline, and he flushes it home. Timeout, Jeff Capel and William Kyle. Back-to-back flushes, it's Slam City in the Steel City.
11 points in 19 minutes for William Kyle in Syracuse's 83-72 win over Pitt today at the Pete down in the Steel City. Syracuse goes to 11-5 and 2-1 in conference play. With Josh Richardson, I'm Jake Klein here on the Double Overtime. We're breaking down the win. Josh, we've talked a lot of X's and O's, what we saw, Syracuse and Pitt. We've started to look ahead a little bit, but I want to fully take out our crystal balls here because the next couple of games, you can say what you want about taking an opponent for granted and having a 100% chance to win the game and all that stuff. But the fact of the matter is Florida State, Boston College, especially those two, but Virginia Tech, Miami as well, each of the next 4 games is certainly winnable.
Absolutely. Well, not just winnable. I think you could say that some of the games against the better ACC teams are winnable.
Yeah.
I think that these are games that you should and need to win. Winnable, in my book, just kind of says you've got an outside chance. You know, the other team's probably favored. I think that all of those games that you just listed are games that Syracuse should, but more importantly, needs to win. I think that's very reflected in some of the standings in the ACC, right? Florida State is 0-3, 7-9 overall. Pittsburgh now 0-3, 7-9 overall. Boston College, same exact record as the other two, right? Those are the two big upcoming games, is FSU on Tuesday and then Boston College next weekend. Those are the games that Syracuse can really start to build some momentum, build more, and really start to figure things out. I mean, Adam talked about the rotation needing to get figured out with Donnie Freeman. Do that. Look pretty good in those games so that you're not rusty and you're not having an oblique type moment when Miami comes to town and when you go into NC State, right? Stuff like that. You need to figure that out in these worse ACC games because you didn't have the chance to figure out your full rotation during the non-con.
Yeah, look, Miami's a good team. I think they're something like 13-2.
They're 14-2 and 3-0 in the ACC.
Yeah, no, Miami's good. I don't want to take away from them, but the way I'm thinking of it is, okay, you've beat Georgia Tech by 10, you've beat Pitt by 11. Can you beat up on Florida State and then beat up on BC and then beat a Virginia Tech team that's now 1-3 in the ACC? Okay, all of a sudden you do that. And
now you
go into that Miami game on a 4-game win streak. Like, there's a momentum aspect to it that honestly is why I think this Syracuse ACC schedule does play out so favorably. And will we be thinking otherwise later in the year when they got to play, a ranked Virginia, a ranked SMU, a top 10 Duke, and a top 20 North Carolina team in a span of 5 games? Yeah, probably. We'll probably be complaining then. Is it tough to play?
But if you figured everything out during these bad games, then you're a lot better.
That's kind of my thought process.
On the other side of that is if you slip up in one of those games, and now you're looking at the uphill battle of, okay, now we have a late stretch of the schedule, and we need to win X amount of these last 10 games, and you look at that, and that's your 2-week stretch. That is really, really difficult.
And that's kind of where my response came from earlier to Dave when he said the season doesn't start until after that Boston College game. I see where he's coming from, and to some degree I agree. The season doesn't start until after that game.
Yeah.
But the season can end before that game.
Completely agree.
If you lose one of those 2 games, Florida State, Boston College, and I would even lump Virginia Tech into that mix. If you lose one of those games, it's sayonara for the NCAA tournament hopes.
And if they didn't lose to Hofstra, I think that's a different story. You can exactly.
But you can't change that.
No, you can't.
You can't
Not
go
at
back
all.
and beat Hofstra,
Nope.
right? So
Nope.
you have to live with that. And look, in the history of the NCAA tournament, there have been teams that have made March Madness as an at-large with far worse losses than 2025-26 Hofstra.
Yes.
So and I said from the day that happened, like, that is not an elimination game loss to Hofstra, but it's close.
It just hurts a lot.
And if you look, Hofstra's played really well, thankfully for Syracuse.
Yeah.
They're getting better, and
Tennessee hasn't. So that
last night,
opposite side of the coin.
Yeah, that's true. I think either last night or 2 nights ago, Hofstra beat Towson by like 10, and somehow that puts Syracuse 6 spots higher in the net ranking. So I don't know. I'll leave that to some guy with a computer and a better brain than mine.
It's the nerds.
Yes. But the fact of the matter is, You cannot change that result. All you can do, and this is what I've been trying to say, is all you can do is just win the next game you have. If you do that against Florida State, and you do that against Boston College, and you do that against Virginia Tech, all of a sudden you've done it 5 games in a row, and then, hello, here's a Miami team. Oh, if you win that game...
Then you go to Raleigh.
Oh, if you win that game,
yeah.
all of a sudden you've got a resume now.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think, and I feel myself getting like oddly coach speaky here because I'm never one for the, we're just focused on going 1-0, and both Mario Cristobal and Kurt Signetti had me cringing with their amounts of
you didn't like that?
We need to get back to work and go 1-0 next week in the national championship game. But the fact of the matter is that has to be the approach for Syracuse.
Yeah.
We can sit here and try to forecast what'll happen when Syracuse goes to the JPJ on February 7th and plays Virginia, or try to forecast what will happen 2 days after Valentine's Day at Cameron Indoor Stadium, or what will happen at the KFC Yum Center on March 3rd. But the fact of the matter is we don't know.
There's a lot of games left.
And Syracuse doesn't know.
Yeah, no, they don't.
All you can do is beat Florida State as badly as you possibly can.
But that's my whole point, is you need to beat them badly.
I don't think you need to. It certainly helps.
It helps, sure.
It certainly
yeah.
helps.
Yeah.
The only thing that can hurt you
is losing.
The game outright.
I agree.
As long as you win, you just stay alive another
Winning the
day.
game you don't lose anything for winning the game, but you gain so much more by winning big.
To some degree, I think Syracuse needs to play the rest of the season in March Madness mode. Not all of these games, but a lot of these games I consider with
just
where
treating
Syracuse's
them like they're
resume
elimination
at,
games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With where Syracuse's resume is at right now, considering that the big win is against Tennessee, and Tennessee has
Is
not played
struggling,
well.
yeah.
They got smoked today on the road at Florida
By 34.
and
or
Florida,
24.
and so Tennessee will now drop out of the top 25 in the AP poll, and presumably take a substantial hit in the metrics as well. So that's going down. You've still got a loss to Hofstra, which presumably, barring they run the table in the CAA, like they're going to pick up some bad losses in conference play just by the nature of conference play. So they probably don't help Syracuse the rest of the way, all things considered. I consider like these next few, certainly Florida State, Boston College, Virginia Tech, but you look at others, Notre Dame especially, the last Pitt game, which caps the regular season. Like those are elimination games.
Yeah, you can't lose them.
You cannot if you lose to Boston College next weekend,
it carries
done.
far more weight than losing to Duke at Cameron Indoor.
Right. If you lose to Florida State on Tuesday, you're done in my eyes. So the mentality for Syracuse has got to be survive and advance. I don't care if you win by 1. I don't care if you win by 1,001. Just win the game and get to the next one. Win the game and get to the next one. Then if you want to try to spring one of those upsets in the big games, all things considered, you're probably going to have to do that a couple of times to make it. But especially against these lesser, unranked, and in some cases bad ACC teams, just survive and advance, man.
And we were talking about this a little bit before the show when we were getting everything ready, and it doesn't fully eliminate them, right? It really eliminates them from an at-large bid.
And frankly,
if they run the table in the
today's
ACC, just because you lose to Boston College doesn't mean you don't make the tournament, right? But you don't want to have to rely on that. You need to do enough in the regular season to put yourself in a good spot where even if you make the ACC semifinals and you lose, you still feel pretty comfortable about your chances to make it in March.
Realistically, you're not beating UNC twice and Duke on the road and SMU at home and Louisville on the road and Virginia on the road.
And maybe one of them again in the ACC
Obviously.
tournament or 2 or 3, depending on what the path is.
So, look, that's kind of where I'm at. Looking forward, it's got to be just don't worry about 2 games down the road or 3 games down the road or next month. Just win the next game, survive, and advance. That's the biggest thing to me.
Yeah, I agree in the sense of you have to take it one game at a time, but if you're going to do that, you got to just I want full throttle from start to finish.
Well, look, I know what you're saying, and it certainly helps as far as net ranking, and everybody knows all that.
Because
garbage.
that's the thing, and that's what I'm
You
basing it
gotta
off
beat the
of.
team by a
Yes,
bunch of
exactly.
Yes, I totally get it. You want to beat a Pitt team by more than 11 because they've been so bad.
And you don't want it to get to 6 after it was 18 in the
Totally
second
get
half.
it. But I think all things considered, you won the game. It didn't hurt you. You move on
and
to
you
the
won
next
by
one
double
and
digits.
you try
That's
to do
fair.
it again.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know that I would have felt drastically different about this Syracuse team sitting in this chair right now had they won today's game by 30. I don't know that I would have felt drastically different about them had they won today's game by 1.
I would have if they had won by 30 because it would have been the first time this year that they've been able to sustain a large lead over a large portion of time. It would have been the same thing as if they did what they did today, but they beat Georgia Tech by 20 and held on to that lead on Tuesday, I would have felt the same way. But it's just a trend and a pattern that continues to happen, and it doesn't worry me for Florida State and Boston College as much, but it worries me for Miami.
I don't disagree. I think it's concerning, but the fact of the matter is the net ranking doesn't look at, well, Pitt trimmed that lead to 6 after Syracuse was up by 18. The net ranking doesn't look at that.
Right.
The committee doesn't look at that.
They just look at what the final score is.
How many games did you win? How many games did you win and by is one of the secondary factors. All right, game time on the double overtime.
We get to have some fun.
Yeah, we're going 10 for 10 on the other side of this break. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to WAER.
The Catholic Church, in terms of storytelling aesthetics, they got everyone beat.
I'm Jesse Thorne. On Bullseye, Ryan Johnson, director of the Knives Out films, talks about why the latest one is set in a Catholic cathedral, not a SoCal megachurch.
The churches I grew up in, most of them look like pottery barns.
That's on the next Bullseye from MaximumFun.org and NPR.
Sunday morning at 11 on WAER.
Jazz legends, the Headhunters, join us on this week's Mountain Stage, along with Amanda Ann Platt and the Honeycutters, Chris Matthews, David Berkeley, and Buffalo Rose.
Hi, this is Bill Summers of the Headhunters. Join us this week in live performance on Mountain Stage.
Sunday from noon to 2 on 88.3 FM WAER.
Weekday mornings are a juggle, sometimes even a struggle. Morning Edition from NPR News eases you into your day and keeps you company through the chaos of a busy morning. Hear interviews that give you context on the day's biggest stories, along with reporting and updates on the latest breaking news. Stay on top of the world with Morning Edition every weekday.
Weekdays from 5 to 9 on 88.3 WAER.
Freeman controls for the first time at the top. Nate George slings a pass near corner. Starling tries the 3. He's got it. J.J. Starling with the first 3-pointer for Syracuse of the day.
J.J. Starling certainly had a nice day, helped lead Syracuse to an 83-72 win over Pitt. Syracuse 11-5, 2-1 in the ACC. Here in our Ostrom Avenue studios, it's the double overtime. Josh Richardson, Jake Klein, and now Jake, you just got to tease it right before we went to break. It's game time. Let's have a little bit of fun. We're doing 10 for 10. 10 questions, rapid fire, lightning round style about this Syracuse team, and we get to both answer them, and there's nobody better to ask the questions than our producer, Nathaniel Cunningham. Nate, what do you got for us?
Yeah, guys, the 10 minutes is on the timer. It starts now. Is Donnie Freeman the best player on this team?
Absolutely. I've made that case multiple times throughout this, and I know exactly where you're going, Jake, but it's Donnie Freeman. This team looks so much better offensively when he is on the floor. He is a 6'8", lanky, long, tall player that can score 20 every given night. He can have impacts defensively as well. This is the leader of this team, and I don't care that he's a sophomore. I don't care that he's missed time. He's the best player without question.
Yeah. Is he the best player? I think you could probably make an argument, but that doesn't change the fact that if I need a basket in a critical moment, I want J.J. Starling with the ball on the perimeter with a full head of steam, elevating and finishing at the rim. I think he's one of the best finishers in the country, one of the best I've seen at Syracuse in quite a while. So, I don't know. Best is subjective. I think I want Starling with the ball in crunch time. That's the point.
All right, well, Jake, then I have a feeling I know where you're going with this one. Who is Syracuse's second option? J.J. Starling, Nate George, or William Kyle?
Donnie Freeman.
Care to elaborate?
No, that's about it.
Okay.
I think, look, I just said it. I consider Starling option 1A and Freeman 1B. If you want to think otherwise, that's fine. But because Starling is 1A, Nate George is not the second option. Yep. Kyle's not the second option. Certainly isn't Starling. So, yeah, Freeman.
I'm just going to reverse it. I'm just going to reverse it because it's Freeman and then Starling. And this is my whole thing on Starling, right, is because how inconsistent that jump shot can be. Because, yes, you said it. He is one of the best finishers in the ACC. He's one of the best finishers in the country when he gets to the rim. But then when he gets outside on the perimeter, sometimes he doesn't have that first half like he did today when he goes 4 for 4 from the field and 2 for 2 from 3. Sometimes the jump shot's looking a lot uglier than that. From the free throw line, he hasn't been great. Donnie Freeman can get you a bucket from anywhere on the court. And I have to think that Starling is going to be the second option on this team, and that's what he should be.
Okay, well, let's talk about somebody that's not in this starting lineup at all, somebody on the bench, Kyan Anthony. Obviously, we know how good he's been in his freshman season. Should he be getting more minutes, Josh?
Yeah, he should. And it's kind of like Adam said, it's just up to Adrian Autry how he wants to manage those minutes, because you have to think about who does play well alongside Donnie. But I think 10 minutes a game for Kyan Anthony and how he's kind of been in these last couple games is just not where it should be. I think as ACC play goes on, Syracuse is going to realize they need a little bit more from him coming off the bench.
I think in a vacuum, yes, Kyan Anthony definitely needs more minutes, not only for the now of what kind of player he is, but you need to start exposing him to high-level college basketball if Syracuse wants to keep this player going forward and turn him into the scorer I think we all know he can be. That said, Kyan has now played 28 minutes over the last 2 games, and Syracuse has won those games by a combined 21 points. So right now he isn't playing a lot, and Syracuse is playing pretty well. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I expect him to play something pretty similar to 10 minutes next time out against Florida State.
Well, Jake, that answer again, it makes me feel like I already know what you're going to say to this one. But should Syracuse play a little bit of a longer bench and include more guys in that rotation?
Certainly not. I do not need to see Luke Fennell. I do not need to see Bryce Zephyr. I do not need to see Noah Lobdell. I do not need to see Chefing Diawara. These are not pieces that are ACC-ready players. I think, from a bench perspective, the number of guys that they have coming in off the bench right now is right where it should be. I think there's still a little bit of toying around to be done with what the exact minute distribution looks like. Does George need 38? Does Kyan need more than 10? I don't think Soiree needs 17 minutes a night. The minute distribution can be fluctuated. The number of guys off the bench is fine.
Yeah, I completely agree. You don't need to play more than a 9-man rotation when the 9 men can all play and play at a pretty high level. You hit the nail right on the head with the minute distribution. Obviously, you can't play more guys if you're going to try and get Kyan more minutes. That's just not how math works. There's not that much time in a game. But you need to figure out why William Kyle is only getting 19 minutes. Why Akir Soiree is getting 17, how that distribution looks. Take some minutes off of Nate George, give him a little bit of a rest, bring some other guards in there, and just kind of make it a little bit more well-rounded, because it's just not looking that way right now.
Well, it's not looking good for you guys right now either. We're about halfway through the time, so we need to keep this a little quick. Going to the next one, 5th question. Is performing in the second half going to be the downfall for Syracuse this season?
I originally thought it was going to be free throws, but they seem to have amended that. I could definitely see performance in the second half being that, but I mean, I guess to Jake's point, if you start that hot in the first half, then maybe you don't need to play that well in the second half. But I think that could definitely be a big factor.
To me, it's not specific to the second half. There are stretches in each game where Syracuse doesn't play well, and you're just waiting for when the opponent run comes. Sometimes the opponent run comes right off the tip. Sometimes the opponent run comes middle of the first half, or going into halftime, or coming out of halftime, or right at the end of the game. Like, these are what Adrian Autry calls dips. And the dips, they know no boundaries of when they can occur, but they occur. So I don't think it's a specific second half problem.
Defense has been the conversation for this team all year long. Is defense the identity with how the offense has struggled so far?
I think to some degree we've stopped crediting Syracuse's defense this season because very quickly we became accustomed to the fact that it's good and it's going to stay good, and I think it deserves more credit. Again, Cummings, 29 points today. Other than that, nobody above 13, only one other player in double digits. Syracuse is a very good defensive team. In terms of points allowed, best in the ACC. Certainly their identity and deserves more credit.
I couldn't agree more. I think this is a spot where, you said it, you kind of just overestimate how good this defense really is, and you kind of overlook them, but you compare it to where this team was last year. I mean, they are just so much more athletic. They can move around. They're quick to the ball. They have guys that can jump, can rebound, can defend on the perimeter. Point of attack guys, number one thing that this team needed, and they have a large number of them this year.
Guys, now that we're done with a little bit more of the X's and O's talk, let's get big picture. Syracuse, they haven't made March Madness in now 4 seasons, potentially a 5th if they don't this year. Is Syracuse still a national brand?
No, it's not. Because when I think about college basketball, I don't think about Syracuse anymore headlining it. I think about Duke. I think about, at this point, I think about Michigan. I still think about North Carolina. I still think about a lot of the ACC teams that just aren't Syracuse. I think there's a bunch of Big 12 teams and a bunch of SEC teams that you could also include in there. I don't think about Syracuse men's basketball when I hear college basketball, not at the current state of the program.
I grew up watching Syracuse, so I certainly do associate them with college basketball. I think, yes, they're still a national brand. They're probably fading in that regard because they have not been in the tournament in so long. Syracuse-Pitt used to be an ABC or an ESPN game even when I was a kid.
Not anymore.
Now it's an ACC network game. I think that probably does say something. But look, if I were to rank the jobs, if every job in the ACC opened today and I were to rank the jobs, Syracuse is 3, 4, 5 range. So if they do move on from Adrian Autry, which there's plenty of speculation out there, I still think they draw a great coach because I still think they are a national brand.
You talked about potentially moving on from Adrian Autry. Is he in the hot seat as of today on January 10th?
If it were up to Jake Klein to make the decision, he would have to win 20 or more games this year just to have a chance at sticking around. And I think based on what John Wildhack, the athletic director, has said, his quote was, "We need to be playing meaningful games in March." He says there's no ultimatum to keep the job, but I think meaningful games in March is probably somewhere around the 20-win mark. Therefore, yeah, he's on the hot seat.
I think at this very second, no, I don't think that he's on the hot seat based on his performance so far this season. However, if you lose to Boston College and you lose to Florida State or you lose to Virginia Tech, the hot seat gets a whole lot warmer and a lot more difficult for Autry to keep his job because those are the games that you can't lose. And if you do lose one of those games, you can say goodbye to any meaningful games in March.
You talked about those games Syracuse can't lose. They've still got a bunch of them coming up. Does Syracuse go above 500 in ACC play?
Above 500, I'll say yes, because last year was just such a bad season for Syracuse in the ACC, and I think that this is definitely a better team. I think that this team is a lot more comparable to the team 2 years ago than it is to last year. However, I think a lot of the same problems from last year are still around. I think over 500 in the ACC is very achievable and something that they should be able to do. It won't be easy, but I absolutely think it can be done.
I'm kind of on the fence. I think they're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 9-9. I think the ceiling's probably
11 or 12.
12-6. I think the floor's probably 7-11 maybe. It seems we've run out of time, so I will say 9-9. 500 exactly.
500 exactly, that'll work. We did run out of time, but we got one more question, so we're going to get it in there while we have it. Will Syracuse, given the way that they've played, they've shown that they can play well against some good teams, will Syracuse make the ACC tournament semifinals?
Too early to say. Depends on who they play against. I'm going to say no.
It's going to be the path that they have to face. I'm also going to say no because I am not that optimistic. I think it could happen, but probably not.
Well, gentlemen, Little over the 10 minutes, but 10 questions in 10 minutes. I think you guys did a pretty good job.
We were pretty close. Thank you, our producer, Nate Cunningham, for running the ship on those 10 questions, coming up with them. Jake, I know we had a lot of fun during that. We've got about 15 minutes left here on the double overtime, and we've got just a few more things to say. Jake and I will give our final words on the other side of this break here on WAER.
Thanks for listening. We hope you're enjoying this WAER sports broadcast. Our sports staff goes where the teams go, home and away, and prepare for days before each game broadcast. Our talk show and podcast hosts analyze games, pore over stats, and keep up on sports trends. These and many behind-the-scenes opportunities are made possible by listener donations. So if you're a fan or an alum, donate to keep our sports legacy strong at WAER.org and click donate.
The Ostrom Avenue Podcast, breaking down Syracuse athletics.
The students rush the field. The Orange are bowl eligible and 6-0 for just the third time in the last 87 years.
And interviewing the industry's experts.
We are now joined by a very special guest. It's Emily Leiker of Syracuse.com.
Check out video interviews on YouTube at Ostrom Avenue Podcast and weekly episodes on WAER.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
Jazz legends, the Headhunters, join us on this week's Mountain Stage, along with Amanda Ann Platt and the Honeycutters, Chris Matthews, David Berkeley, and Buffalo Rose.
Hi, this is Bill Summers of the Headhunters. Join us this week in live performance on Mountain Stage.
Sunday from noon to 2 on 88.3 FM WAER.
Starling on the near wing. Back up top to Freeman, who's defended by Corhin. Bounces it to the left wing. Gives it off to Kings. He tries a three, and he's got it. Nate Kings, a three-pointer for Syracuse.
Welcome back on the double overtime here on WAER with Josh Richardson. I'm Jake Klein. We've just dissected a whole lot about Syracuse men's basketball after the Orange took down Pittsburgh 83-72 to go to 11-5 on the season, 2-1 in the Atlantic Coast Conference. And as we wind down here on a Saturday evening, what better way to cap it off than with our final words? And Josh, I'll give you the floor for your final word after this SU win.
Oh, thanks, Jake. My stance on this has been the same since the first minute we started the show, and you've made some great points, but I think to its core, I think the statement is still true and has a good amount of truth to it. The record may not reflect it, but this is still the same old Syracuse team as last year and as the year before that under Adrian Autry. And I just think about the way that this team wins games, and nothing ever feels comfortable. Nothing can ever be easy. And I think at some point, something just has to be easy. It's not just the ACC games. It's the non-conference games. It's the ones that you only beat St. Joseph's by, around 10? You beat Northeastern by 8. You lose to Hofstra. You beat Mercyhurst by 14, right? But none of those games ever feel like it should be close. We just talked about how Syracuse is, whether or not it's still a national brand. Well, when Duke plays its non-conference games and when North Carolina plays its non-conference games, none of them are that close. They're all 20 or 30-point wins. And if Syracuse wants to get back to the same spot that it was alongside those teams and atop the ACC and atop the Big East when it was back in those days, atop all of college basketball, something just has to be easy. And it hasn't been for Adrian Autry over the first 2 seasons. And just because they've been winning some of those close games now, it doesn't feel a whole lot different when I watch the games.
So you've been the negative Nancy of the program here, which, as I said, is usually my
your job.
And I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to say that
Shocking.
For my final word, look, the fact of the matter is, and I think we both agree, Syracuse is still alive. They're not dead yet. The Hofstra loss was awful. The Tennessee loss was great. All things considered, it probably comes out in the wash, and Syracuse is still alive. They've got most of the ACC schedule left. How can you make it to the NCAA tournament? Well, for the recipe, I will channel the words of Al Davis, the legendary Raiders owner and a Syracuse alum, I might add. Just win, baby. I don't care if it's by 1. I don't care if it's by 50. I don't care if it's by 100. Just win enough games, and you're going to get there no matter what, no matter how many they're by. You can do it by margin of victory, yes, and a lot of teams will do it that way. I don't know if this Syracuse team has that in it, but they can still make it on the back of just pure volume of victories. If you get to 22, 23 wins, it becomes hard to leave a team out of the NCAA tournament at that number. And so, does my opinion on how good this Syracuse team is change if instead of beating Pitt by 11 today, they beat them by 1? No, it does not. Does my opinion on this Syracuse team change if they beat Pitt by 31 instead of 11 today? No, it does not. I don't care if you beat Georgia Tech by 50 or 10. I don't care if you beat Pitt by 11 or 1. Same goes for Florida State on Tuesday, or Boston College on Saturday, or Virginia Tech the following week. Just win the games. That's the number one objective for Syracuse, because at some point those opponents aren't Boston College anymore. They're Duke or North Carolina or SMU. As Fran Brown always says, you just got to have one more than the other guy. And if Syracuse can stack some one more than the other guy performances in a row, especially against some big-time other guys, they're going to be in a good spot for March Madness regardless of the Hofstra loss. So my final word after Syracuse beats Pitt in a probably too close for comfort game is, as cliche as it is, a win's a win's a win, and just keep winning.
I'm curious how far that cautious optimism goes if you're not going to be the negative Nancy.
We'll see.
Do you think that they're
if they come out on
Tuesday at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, if the season ends today, I think they're probably on the outside looking in. I don't think they're necessarily far off.
And if you flash forward to say they win the next 3 against Boston College,
you're in
Florida
a better
State
spot than you were.
Virginia
You're in a
Tech.
better spot at 12-5 than
Yeah.
you were at 11-5.
Yeah.
You're in a better spot at 13-5 than you were at 12-5, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? So, is Syracuse a world beater? Are they a national championship contender? No. But the fact of the matter is, they're alive. They're not dead. And some days, all you can do is not be dead. And if they come out on Tuesday and lose to Florida State, they're dead.
Just a little bit.
On Saturday, if they lose to Boston College, they're dead. But just don't die. Refuse to die. And look, is it likely that they refuse to die the whole rest of the way?
No.
Probably not, but it's attainable. It's not impossible. Therefore, you got to still keep fighting for it.
Yeah.
That's my kind of take on the season going forward.
Yeah. It'll be interesting because, I mean, we've talked about it a few times. You have nothing to gain but everything to lose in this little stretch, and if you don't take advantage of it, the mountain to make a run in the ACC tournament, to make a run at March Madness gets a lot tougher. And
it's all about the stub your toe games, really.
I'm really curious to see what the games against the better ACC teams do look like.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
I think Clemson is one of the better ACC teams. For the
so
record.
far they have been. Yeah, absolutely, they have been. They're 14.
That's a
14th
program
right now in the
that
country.
very quietly, because it's a football school, has become one of the better programs in the ACC. They've made some legitimate runs in March Madness over the last couple of years. I believe they've been in 4 of the last 5 NCAA tournaments under Brad Brownell, who's, again, quietly become a coaching legend in the ACC. Syracuse was right with him, and that was in Donnie Freeman's first game back where he did not score a point in the first half.
Lost by 3.
And that's your only ACC loss, and like we said, you figure Syracuse is favored in the next 3 games.
Yeah, you'd hope.
Yeah,
right? I mean they weren't favored today.
Yeah, the Virginia Tech games may be the one toss-up of the next 3 games, but Syracuse is at home, so that's usually worth 3 points on the line. Whatever. The point is, I think we can comfortably say we expect them to win the next 3 games. All of a sudden, you're 5-1 in ACC play.
And then what happens after that?
Okay, you're on a roll.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think it's going to be fun. I would certainly advise everyone out there to continue to tune in on WAER and here on the Double Overtime, because with each of these games, it gets tenser and tenser, and with each one that's a win, it becomes more and more interesting, and the stakes get higher and higher for every game on WAER Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
The Miami game starts to mean more. And then if you win that one, then the NC State game means even more than that, et cetera, et cetera.
And if
all
you
the
win
way
those,
into a crazy
then Lord
stretch.
Almighty, how about the North Carolina game?
It's definitely a backloaded ACC schedule, because in the final 9 games of ACC play, North Carolina twice, at Virginia, which is ranked, at Louisville, which is ranked, home against SMU, which is ranked, and of course the big one, the trip to Cameron Indoor Stadium. So win, lose, or draw, even though they don't do draws in college basketball, it's going to be fun. There's big games, and all you can hope for as a Syracuse fan at this point is that by the time you get to the UNC road game on the 2nd of February,
you're not dead.
You're alive,
yeah.
And that game means something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it going to happen?
There's a lot
Again,
of time. You
squirt
can't say
gun to
that
my
they don't
head,
have
I
the
would
chances.
say no.
You can't say that they're not going to have the chances.
Exactly.
That's the
Exactly.
big thing, I think.
That's
at
what
this
you
point.
hope anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm excited for it. I think, is it the Syracuse basketball of old? No, I don't think. I'm certainly not questioning that. I don't think anybody else is questioning that. But again, all you
gotta
can
manage
ask
expectations a little bit more now, compared to
No,
maybe.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to lower my expectation. My expectation of Syracuse basketball remains that it goes to the NCAA tournament at a minimum every year.
Okay.
I don't want to take that away. And if they miss the NCAA tournament,
Well, hopefully they can reach that expectation this year for you.
yeah, they certainly hope that. And look, all I'm saying is it is still possible. And until it is impossible, which in my eyes would be any loss in the next 3 games, until that happens, and it is impossible for them to make the NCAA tournament as an at-large, then the fact of the matter is, if you're a Syracuse fan out there, you should still be rooting for it. Even if you don't like the product on the court, even if you don't like the coach, blah, 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 blah. If they're alive and they have a shot and you claim yourself to be a Syracuse fan, then root for Syracuse until they're 6 feet under.
That's fair. That's fair. I have no issues with that, Jake.
Yeah. We shall see how it all turns out for Syracuse. Thank you so much for tuning in on the Double Overtime. For my partner, Josh Richardson, I'm Jake Klein. Want to thank our producer, Nathaniel Cunningham, as well. Our engineer, John Baccio, who had a heck of a day behind the board. Our play-by-play man, Adam Hipsky, for joining us. And our WAER Sports Talk desk of Sydney Chan, Nick Zuppi, and Easton Peru. Syracuse beats Pitt 83-72 on the road and goes to 11-5 on the season. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Double Overtime. Back at it on Tuesday night when Syracuse plays Florida State in the Dome at 9 o'clock. For now, for Josh Richardson, I'm Jake Klein saying good night, Syracuse.